So, with a big week coming up, so many different stuff has been coming out this week. Obviously, it's Champions League round of 16. We start tomorrow, but most importantly, this is the week of the presidential election. So right now, there is a lot of stuff coming out of the club. Huge news. Even I would say as soon as today and yesterday, so many big stuff has been coming out. So this episode of the Blaugrana Podcast is going to be one for the ages. And listen, obviously you guys know my fellow guest, the Barca boy. But listen, you guys have already seen this guy on the channel before, right? The Barca Podcast, Dan Hilton. Big up to you. Appreciate you for joining the Blaugrana Podcast. How you doing today?
Good. I mean, you helped me immediately plug my watch-alongs on Big Up during the matches. So I'm glad you said Big Up. I'm always looking to collaborate and share what is a wonderful Barcelona community. And I think talking about the elections and everything, things are tenuous, but it's just a reminder that this is all just one fan-owned community and a fan-owned club. And then obviously, we hold the leverage of communication here with the fans. So that word salad, Omar and Afed, is enough for me. Let's get started.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, obviously, our week started very, very well. We did the job at the San Mamés Stadium, a stadium that, usually they give us a hard time in pressure games, but we managed to do the job over there, getting the 1-0 victory, still opening the gap on Real Madrid with 4 points. And look, I feel like the game, there wasn't really a lot of things to come out of it. Obviously, this was the first game since the Copa del Rey game. We kind of knew, we kind of had a feeling that Flick might rotate. Obviously, with the high intensity, we saw a lot of the key players played in the Atletico game. We kind of knew we were going to see some changes, and we did. But in the end, right, it wasn't pretty, but we did get the win. It was a 1-0 victory courtesy of Lamine Yamal, again, with an amazing goal. And look, I wanted to ask your thoughts on it. Obviously, I'm going to be very honest. There wasn't really a lot of big stuff to come out of the game. I feel like we handled ourselves well. Defensively, we were pretty good. Midfield-wise, we didn't see Pedri, but we had a level of control in midfield. I feel like Casado did his job, and now for the 45 minutes, he did his work. Dani Olmo, really need to see more from him. I'm very honest. I feel like his form was kind of taken a little bit of a sharp turn recently. And in the attack, we saw Rashford start instead of Rafinha. Lamine Yamal was on the pitch, and Ferran Torres, which I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't a big fan of, right? As we saw him again start again, and disappointing from him again. But I want to just go straight to the panel, right? I'm gonna start actually with you, Dan, right? The game against Athletic Bilbao, right? What are the things you kind of took out of the game, really, for you?
Well, yeah, I always do after the match. I always do my 5 headlines. I come out with YouTube on the podcast stuff, and it's one of those matches where you struggle to get 5, right? I feel like I had 3 definite headlines that I wanted to use, and I think you hit on a bunch of what those important notes were. One being you clearly saw the lack of intensity from the Copa hangover, which is totally fair. They did not play extra time, but I mean, Pedri was completely fatigued. I'm glad that he was able to be rotated. Bernal had the stomach issues, but the fact that he went 45 minutes and came out, I think that you laid the table, getting 3 points at San Mamés in the way that they did, and just basically surviving your way to 3 points. I'm nothing but optimistic after that match. Again, aesthetically, whatever. Forget how it happened. It's fine. Because now looking ahead to Newcastle immediately, you're going to be able to start Pedri and Bernal in that double pivot. No other players went down. And Rashford starting on the left means that Rafinha was able to be rotated, so he can start against Newcastle. Again, Lewandowski was just coming back, but Lewandowski will start again in the first leg against Newcastle. So now you're looking at Lewandowski. Well, I would be surprised if it's not Lewandowski, but I'm basically like, so I would expect that it's going to be Lewandowski starting over Ferran Torres. I'm like 65-35 thinking it'll be Lewandowski, but just looking at what was rotated, who was rotated, and getting the 3 points at San Mamés, regardless of it being ugly, to me is, again, very optimistic, very positive. I'm not worried about that. And then the other point you mentioned is that you needed Rashford, Casado, you needed your sub players to put in a shift. And I've been very critical of Marc Casado this season, but I thought that was certainly the best game he has had since maybe October, if not this whole season. I think what he added and what he was able to do in that first half in particular just calmed Barcelona down and allowed them to survive. And again, that's the mark of a team that can win the Liga and then again give the Champions League a good amount of effort. So yeah, as ugly as it is, it's that dissonance where you watch a match and like, that was not fun. That was very boring, not fun, Copa hangover. But all of the goals and objectives that you had that were required to prepare you for Newcastle on Tuesday and get the 3 points against MMS. You did all of that. So, it is the very definition of job done.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. I feel like, guys like Casado, like you mentioned, I was very impressed with him. Obviously, last time we saw him start was in the Atletico game. We didn't have the best of his games on that day. So we needed to see a performance like this from him. And I was very, very happy for him because, you don't ever want to see players, have those kind of performances, and that's what you remember them by. So I'm glad that Casado was able to pick himself up and have the game that he had in the game against Bilbao. But Hafed, what about you, man? What was your thoughts on the Bilbao performance and the result?
Yeah, I mean, I came into this game saying that I think that this match is imperative to our league titles. One of our, I think, 3 toughest matches left of the league campaign. And it's something that we've struggled in. I've seen us over the past, 10 years at MMS not get the best results, whether it be in Copa del Rey, knockouts matches, league matches, Super Copas. I feared this MMS more than the Bernabeu. And going into that match, I was saying to myself, and I was saying on my previews and stuff as well, we get a win. I think this is one hand on the league title. The game was tough. It was cagey. I think in the first half we missed, a good amount of chances. Thankfully, in the first half we didn't give away too many chances, apart from the offside that was given on the Inaki Williams goal. Ferran Torres up front was very, very lackluster, very, very poor in my opinion, causing Barcelona a lot of issues in attacking flow, attacking transition. We didn't really create much in that first half. Second half comes in, Lamine Yamal brilliance takes us over the line. I think we defended immensely well in that final 20 minutes. So that shows us learning from our mistakes from last season, seeing out a game that was difficult. Joan Garcia earning us 3 points as well from the save from Oriol Sanset, the saves he made in the first half as well. It's such a rejuvenation to see a goalkeeper, come off his line, come out for, crosses. I remember that one day where he fouled the player when he came out, hit his chest. Ter Stegen, Szczesny, and Nakapini wouldn't have come out for that. So that would have been a clear opportunity for Athletic Club in front of goal. So, commence the team for, getting a win in the most difficult away game of the season, in my opinion, after a huge game that was tiresome. I think Rafinha, Pedri, all came out after the game, the whole entire team, and Fermin as well came out saying the team is tired. We put in a huge effort on Tuesday. The turnaround was quite quick, which it was because the game was supposed to be on Sunday. Got moved to Saturday because of the Champions League.
Yes.
But it's a huge 3 points, in my opinion.
100%. And look, obviously there's a lot of positives, and I'll be honest with you, right? For me, I do want to see the changes, and I think, Dan, you did allude to it. We saw obviously especially with Ferran Torres, right? I'm gonna be very real. I feel like, especially from his performance in the Atletico game, where a lot of people, including me, were very critical of his performance. We kind of, expected that maybe Flick might, cut him some slack and maybe give him a break, but obviously he started him in this game, and once again, I'm gonna be very real. I mean, he had one good chance where the flick from the corner, which could have been an amazing goal, but really apart from that, once again, right, he was just another player who was completely quiet in the attack. So was Rashford, but to be fair with Rashford, this was like his first start since his return from injury. So I kind of excused it, right? So I was like, okay, well, this is the first time you're back, at the start of the game. But when it comes to Ferran,
Omar, I think more importantly about Rashford was that Cancelo and Rashford had never started together.
Yes.
That was what I had noticed, that just the lack of chemistry between those two. Like every time defensively, Rashford would go to pinch, and then if Cancelo got the turn, Rashford would either check to the ball with Cancelo expecting the long ball, or he would go for the long run into the half space, and then Cancelo was expecting the wall pass. Right? There were so many little moments when Barcelona were on the ball that Rashford and Cancelo clearly had not worked together. So to your point, I really don't put as much on Rashford from that one.
Yeah, I don't either. And I think that, like you mentioned, maybe they just need a few games together, right? And we're going to see a lot of them potentially for the rest of the season. And for me, the point still stands. I feel like Ferran Torres needs some time away from the squad, right? Because I'm going to be very honest, the amount of times, and this is why I feel like a lot of attention has been on Ferran Torres, especially from people like me, right? It's that we're watching the game, right? And sometimes, attackers, they get nullified in games. But most of the time, they make themselves an issue, right? With Lewandowski, he's always an issue. He's always making defenders move around because you never want to keep your eyes on him, because when he gets the ball where it needs to be, he will always finish. So you always know he's not the fastest player. He's not the strongest player. He's not the player that he was in his prime, but he's still him. He still has that finishing. And because of that fear factor of knowing that he still has that finishing in him, he can always be an issue. He can always pull defenders away because they're always worried, oh yeah, we can't leave Lewandowski alone in the box, right? But when it comes to Ferran, I feel like that's the difference. Like in the game, I can just think of one moment. It was like 5 minutes after Lewandowski was on. Lamine Yamal did the good work, right? Got the ball, right? Completely cooked the defender. And then Lewandowski put himself out there. He was so free in the box, but positionally, he knew where to be to make sure that when Lamine Yamal would find him. So Lamine Yamal found him. Free in the box. He ended up having a shot, and it was blocked by the defender. But that was the kind of movement that I was talking about that I wasn't seeing from Ferran Torres in the game. And we have not been seeing from Ferran, which I feel like brings a lot of frustrations from a lot of us, the Barca fans. You understand what I mean? And I'm really frustrated with him. I'm sometimes really frustrated with the manager because I feel like sometimes players like this, you kind of need to give them some time off the field, right? To kind of make them reflect and maybe, play some games from the bench. And I feel like with Ferran Torres, that's the kind of player he is also. He gains a lot of confidence coming from the bench, getting the goals. You can see that's where most of his confidence comes from. That's why he had such a great season last season, being Lewandowski's understudy, right? Because Lewandowski was so good, right? So for me, I feel like those are some of the negative lights, but like you mentioned, it was a great performance and a great win, right? But yeah, listen, let's actually get into, I feel like, the most important parts, right, of this podcast, right? I feel like a lot of the reasons why a lot of people might be looking on this. Let's talk about the presidential election. Now, presidential election, obviously, is this week. It's been absolutely heating up. We know we've been seeing like so many different stuff been going on, right? But let's talk about the main thing that's come out last 24 hours. Obviously, is Xavi Hernandez's interview where, yeah, he let loose. He finally broke his silence. I mean, here's the thing, right? I feel like from some of us Barca fans, they do a lot of like digging into the club and reading the news and stuff like that. When we kind of saw the way things ended with Xavi, we knew there was something not right. Something kind of happened behind the scenes, right? Which we knew eventually either Xavi or someone in the club, some journalists might just come out and talk about it, or Xavi would finally open up. And he finally did. And he didn't hold back. And to be honest with you, it doesn't really surprise me. Ever since, obviously, Xavi kind of, had it out there that he was supporting Victor Font, right? We kind of knew, you're like, well, listen, at the end of the day, he wanted to leave the club in 2024. The club made him stay. He stayed only to get sacked. So I know he felt some kind of way, but he did not hold back. And obviously, that's where I want to start. Before we talk about the Messi thing, which is the one that got the most attention, let's actually talk about his sacking. Because a lot of the things that came out from what he said was mainly is the power of, I'm sorry if I'm going to butcher his last name, but Alejandro Echeverria. Is that how you pronounce his last name? Is it Echeverria?
Yeah.
Right? But basically, Xavi does not like this dude. It seems like this guy had a huge influence to why he was sacked, right? And basically, from what Xavi basically said was that, the club, Laporta was the one that actually convinced him to stay because he wanted to leave. And then basically Alejandro was the one that got into Laporta's ear and basically convinced him to get him sacked, right? And basically, long story short, he kind of made it seem like Alejandro is the guy that runs things. Laporta doesn't really make a lot of decisions. It seems like Alejandro is the one that basically tells Laporta what to do, and Laporta just does it. You understand what I mean, right? And I want to start with that first, right? What do you guys think about that whole situation? Because let me first of all say this before I pass the mic on to you, Dan, right? You don't remember when he got sacked, a lot of us Barca fans were shocked. We were shocked. We were thinking, well, wait a minute, he wanted to leave, we kept him, and then you sacked him. What's the deal with this? And then they came out and they said that basically Xavi wanted to basically have a whole squad overhaul, which, funny enough, in this interview, he actually addressed and denied that, no, I didn't say I wanted a whole overhaul. I said I wanted maybe one or two players, right? But basically, they made it seem like he was just sick of this whole squad and he wanted everyone basically 90% of this whole squad gone. And that was the narrative that was kind of put out there. And the question is, well, if it's a lie, then you can kind of see where Xavi's anger is coming from, because it's like, you're throwing me under the bus. So what do you think, Dan?
Here, you know what? It's funny. I actually am going to pass the mic to Fed for this one. To be honest, when it comes to the he said between Laporta and the campaign and Font and Xavi, I feel like so many of my thoughts come from understanding the fact that this is a political election. And I think the comments that Xavi made. So again, I'm looking at this through aesthetics as opposed to the comments. Again, I want to let Hafed kind of speak to the actual substance of what Xavi and Laporta and Font and their debate today and what they said. But I think the aesthetics here and the timing of Xavi, obviously the election is this week, but looking at the we'll say the lack of groundswell of support from Font, it is really interesting that Xavi made the comments in the way that he did, and is in theory having that interview to support Font and create, an issue on the other side in Laporta's campaign. But to me, again, this is the second week of March, and Barcelona have a huge match in the Champions League tomorrow night, and obviously Font and his group, which is now being backed by Xavi, had to have had some understanding that, again, the biggest fight you're fighting is the success that the club has had, or the winning that they've done under Laporta. And that by and large, like, it is very much on politics can be narrowed down to what? Name recognition, we'll say party lines, and that's not necessarily a thing, but there are political camps within the Catalan elite. But as I always tell everybody as well, who's kind of not in that world, right? Like, Font and Laporta are so much more similar, right? They are 95% more similar. They are two businessmen in Catalan society. Okay. So they are 95% closer to one another than they are to any of us. Right. So for us to understand that political world is just a step that, not to say that it's above my pay grade, right? But like, again, then they're presenting these messages in the nuance to the socios who are going to be voting in this election. And in truth, most of the associates have already made their decisions, and their decisions are generally, hence why Bartomeu, again, looking at what he was doing from 2013 through 2015, the fact that he was reelected came down just to, and I'm not even speaking about afterwards, but he got reelected because they won the treble. That is it. That is it. Right. That is it. And it did not matter anything else around the edges, because again, anyone with any understanding of economics would have had an idea prior to Neymar being sold. So we're not talking about Neymar and Coutinho, and we're talking about 2014, 15, taking over for Rosell. Everything surrounding Bartomeu, even at the time economically, was taking the club into a position of high risk and high reward. They were going to have over $1 billion in revenue, but taking them into a position of high risk, high reward. But again, just winning the treble was enough, obviously, for his mandate to continue. So it's interesting to me that voters are obviously going to vote on, as they say, one issue, single voter issues so often. And so Xavi's interview yesterday was so interesting because it was very nuanced, created division, potentially amongst the fan base, amongst the conversation that we have. So yes, it did bring news to, and it heated up the election, but in truth, for the club, and even if Font were to win with that on the back of that interview and still thinking about everything with Messi, it feels that the club is in a lose-lose situation. And so I think, again, as somebody who doesn't have a vote and doesn't have to worry about that vote, it's a bit frustrating that the way that this conversation and this election has turned a bit. You know what I'm saying? Like,
exactly. I agree. Yes, I agree with that 100%.
Instead of finding the best candidate, it became who is not the worst, and who is lying, who is telling the truth.
And that's the beautiful thing, isn't it? Because I agree with that, and I'm going to pass this on to Hafez before I have my thoughts on it. But Barca boy, right? Obviously, you're definitely more vocal about your opinions when it comes to this whole election. Like at the end of the day, listen, the people in my audience, they already know where you stand. But
you make me sound like I'm full of cowardice. But what I will tell is, people, I did interview and got to spend time here in New York with Xavi Hernández a few weeks ago. And I found it so interesting. Yeah, he came on my show and I went to one of his events and we talked about a bunch of different things. I did not back him in the election. Like, again, that was a whole part of our agreement too. Like, this is merely like, this is what this is. And it was funny talking to him and his team for so long, because he was telling me, and I'm seeing this on social media, that people were like, oh, he was working under Bartomeu, which he did. And they were just immediately, that was dismissive, right? That was immediately
That trauma of
without the understanding that he was in charge of the women's division and
exactly. The one part that was actually doing well.
Right, exactly. So who did Lamine Yamal sign for the club under? Xavi Hernández. Like, who did, right? And so that's not to say about, like, I'm not saying, again, I wouldn't be backing him. I wouldn't be backing Laporta. I'm not saying like this is what my vote is for, but what I find it so interesting that he came on my show for 35 minutes and yet so many people just didn't even want to watch that show and like listen to that conversation.
Yeah. It's that trauma. It's that trauma of connection. You know, when you're connected like to someone like that who's done so much damage at the club, you just think, oh, you connected to this guy? No. But then, like, it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
But that's also the thing about politics, that for Font, because he's never won, because we can never say this is what his presidency is represented by, we have to sum up who he is in one sentence. And that is the problem when I think our understanding of this election, as I keep reiterating, our understanding of this election and these conversations are happening on Twitter, mainly, to be honest with you, or Instagram, or in short form content, which again limits the nuance in elections like this. Whereas those who are at the debate, those who are having conversations in offices, in the bureaus, in Catalonia, and those socios, those conversations are different conversations than the ones that, again, like, this is no disrespect to you or myself, or these are like our audiences, you know, the three of us. Right. But there is more nuance that is existing in this election than we are privy to or could understand because of our place in the global fan base and just not being there.
Right. 100%. Barca boy, honestly, your thoughts on this whole Xavi interview, especially on his thoughts on like his second.
Thoughts on the Xavi interview is that it's timed very, very poorly. There are so many opportunities where Barcelona had, we had the easy run for the first 2 months of this year where he could have came out and said some words that would have impacted us, but he's coming out 6 days before the election with these words, and the words being mostly lies. I uploaded a video a few hours after the quotes, debunking it completely just based on my knowledge. It doesn't take, a 3,000 IQ to realize that 90% of what Xavi said factually was wrong, and the other 10% were just his opinion, which you can't be wrong because it's your opinion. On Alejandro Echeverria, whether he has huge influence in behind the scenes doesn't really concern me, because at the end of the day, every decision that we see is going to be on Laporta's hand, on Laporta's legacy. So he's going to be the one that's going to give that final approval, and it's going to be on his back. The person who brought Alejandro Echeverria, by the way, to Barcelona was Xavi himself. So
wow.
So people saying that this guy who we didn't vote for backstabbing Xavi, when Xavi was the one that brought him in initially to Joan Laporta's board.
Wow.
Whether if I'm Barcelona president and you're both my right hand man, I'm gonna listen to your opinion, right? Because you have to be subjective when you're running the biggest institution in the world, especially on a sporting level. If I want to sign, let's say, for example, Harry Kane, Dan says yes, Omar says no. You're gonna be hearing both sides of the argument, and then you can make your own decision. Whether Alejandro Echeverria makes the decision or not does not concern me, because again, it's on Laporta's hands. And
I do say yes to Harry Kane, Hafed. I do say yes to Harry Kane.
Me too.
Me too. That will be unanimous.
Now we're unanimous. But I just think a lot of what Xavi said, man, it's quite clear that this is plotted to do this to cause some uproar for the election. We know that, Xavi was a big backer of Victor Font now since 2021. And Laporta pulled the cold moment where he took Xavi and appointed him as a coach from Victor Font to show who's really boss out here. But everything that Xavi said was wrong in regards to Messi, in regards to him saying that he didn't want to sell the whole squad, where he literally said that from his own mouth in a press conference. So it's like,
oh, wow. I don't remember that.
Remember, the reason why he got sacked was that he came out in the final press conference of the season. I forgot who he played the last day of Celta Vigo or something. And he said the squad needs a really big overhaul. We need to sell players. We need to, sign players to compete. And this is why Laporta said it, because he said that, you told me behind the scenes that you just wanted maybe 1 or 2 changes and that most of the team was fine. But now you're telling everyone that you want a squad overhaul. We're not on the same level. Thank you for your services. And now he's saying that, I just asked for Zubamendi and asked to sell one player to, sign Zubamendi. That's all I asked for. But you're just contradicting yourself. And then the Messi thing as well. Javier Tebas came out a few hours ago saying, after the Xavi interview, saying that there was never any point that Messi was coming back to 2023 from the La Liga perspective, where he said that, and then Xavi said that, La Liga gave the green light, which again is false. Messi also said in his interview after he signed, remember at the time we were actually after Messi, What Laporta said,
in Miami,
what Laporta said about how things occurred is 100% accurate based on the reports that we got live during that summer of 2023. Everyone was saying the same thing, and Laporta has now come out today in that Victor Font debate saying what everyone said. So he's at least coinciding with factual information. Messi even came out after saying that, look, in the end, Barca were interested. We weren't really close to an agreement. I knew that maybe players had to be sold or salaries had to be adjusted, and I didn't want to put that burden on players, on Barcelona professionals. And he made his own choice. His father said that he wanted a simple, easy life after, maybe intense 2 years at PSG, winning the World Cup, and then afterwards getting some criticism at PSG. He wanted a calm life, retire in Miami. That's fine. But when you're saying that, we had to agree with Messi, and Laporta said, no, that is factually incorrect. What happened is that Xavi called Messi, come to Barcelona. Messi's like, I'm down. Xavi then told Laporta, hey, Messi said he's willing, he wants to come to Barcelona. Laporta's like, cool. He sends a contract proposal to his father, who's also his agent, and Jorge Messi. Jorge Messi came back to him saying, thanks for the offer, but we're going to go for the calm, cool, happy life into Miami. And Laporta's like, say no more. We appreciate you. Stadium and contribution coming your way. But all these things are being twisted in narrative. And even, back in 2021, when Messi first left, they all want to put that on Laporta's hand. We're in the reality. We all know what happened.
Exactly.
It was financial constraints. So there's this narrative that Bartomeu kind of set when he rejected that Borofax of Messi back in 2020, because he knew that whoever came next as president would be the one that decides Messi's future. Victor Font lets it go at Laporta saying that, you promised us Messi would stay. He didn't end up staying. When you look at all the interviews back when they were debating him, Victor Font, and Tony Freya, who was the third candidate at the time, of course, the third candidate, Marcellia, this time didn't make it. He said in the interview, I am the best option to bring Messi, and I'll do everything I can to keep Messi. He never promised or guaranteed Messi. People like to play that clip of him hugging that, mannequin with the shirt, saying, I got you, buddy, and kisses it and then moves on, which is factual. Because in the end, Messi was not going to stay at Barcelona, and the only person who could turn around was Joan Laporta, and he did turn around. But because we were broken on our assets due to not being run by the high risk, high reward fraud of a president we had beforehand, we were left in a situation where La Liga backs in the corner and asked us to debt our TV rights for 30 years to sign Messi for, a 2-year renewal. So I think Xavi's interview was poorly timed, bringing instability. If you want to say this after maybe in the summer or even during the Christmas break that we just had, I would have been way more open, acceptable to it. But the reality is this is all part of the election. He's trying to cause disarray. He's trying to help his buddy, which he publicly backs and went and signed and voted for him publicly with a few cameras and a few photos. He's trying to help him. And that's the reality of the situation.
No, I 100% agree. And this is where I feel like we all unanimously agree on. It's the timing that's the problem. And I'm going to be very
timing though, but everything he said is factually incorrect. Some of the stuff that he said,
but I feel like that's easy to, you can debunk that. And a lot of people, like, obviously you did a lot of your digging. Right? There's a lot of people that don't do that, right? So a lot of people are just going to be like, interesting, this and this and this. With me, I'm kind of looking at it and I'm like, well, here's the thing. If you had this on your heart and you wanted to talk about it the whole time, right? Like you guys mentioned, the timing was wrong. And I feel like this and what the timing kind of does is that it makes it less about, he's speaking his truth, and more about, isn't it interesting that the election is in the next 6 days and he's trying to come out and say this? It's as if this guy is saying this so that a lot of people might start, trying to change their mind, right? And for me, what really was interesting, right, was this morning when I was listening to the debate of Victor Font and Laporta. I'm going to be very honest with you, right? Throughout this whole election, I've kind of took a step back where I've not been, overly critical of like one and supporting one. Obviously, I'm more on Laporta's side because I see that he's building something, right? I see that he's building something incredible at this club right now, and I want to see where this goes. You understand what I mean, right? It would be I feel like it would be dumb for us to kind of, ruin this while, not knowing what this guy could bring, right? When we are seeing continuous progression under Laporta, right? So ever since he's returned back in power, right? So I feel like it wouldn't make any sense. For me, when it comes to Victor Font, this is where I really began to reserve my opinions on this dude. It's the fact that throughout his campaign, he hasn't really been telling us what his plan is if he got into office. What really has been irritated, especially today, the debate really irritated me today, was how he spent the whole time blasting Laporta on the treatment of Xavi rather than in the debate telling us, okay, if I become president, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to bring. This is what I want to bring. You understand what I mean, right? Which is a lot of us Barca fans, we want to hear. We want to hear what you're going to bring. We want to hear what your plan is. We want to hear what your forward thinking, what the future of this club is going to be while you're in charge, right? We don't want to hear what you think of what this person hasn't brought or what this guy hasn't done. At the end of the day, Laporta has been here 5 years, right? When he took over, we were on the brink of extinction, right? Literally. Do you remember how bad things were? It was really bad. We were thinking, when are we going to see our next league title? When are we going to see our next Champions League? He won the league within 2 seasons of returning as president, right? And look at the team that we have now. We have a team that last season almost did the quadruple, that is contending in Europe again, right? We barely, with all the financial issues that we have, we can't really go out and spend as much as we need to go and actually, deal with some of these issues in the squad, right? We still are able to compete. And it's mainly because of Laporta. So Laporta has already shown what he can do. We want to see what you're going to do. But that's the problem. And I feel like that is why we can all see where this is going to end up. Because we have already seen what Laporta can do. Victor Font, you haven't shown us what you're going to do. All you've been doing is been sitting there criticizing this dude. And the worst thing about what he said today, what really got to me, was how he just kind of just excused Laporta's accomplishments in the past 5 years. Let's be real. The fact that he's come out and said, well, the club has been in a good place in the last 5 years, but that's not mainly on Laporta. That's mainly on how good the women's team were doing, right? And basically them playing so well is kind of what's been elevating the first time. I'm like,
Omar, I do want to play devil's advocate for a second about the Font, again, the political approach to the way Font's handling this campaign.
Right.
Because in his first campaign with the See Aus Futur, he very explicitly laid out that first time around
I agree
what the mission was going to be, and that fell flat because, again, like what I said about it's politics 101, people were bored by that. It was picked up by Sport and Mundo Deportivo, but it never actually even broke through the zeitgeist beyond like an interview on Cat or Cat Radio or TV3. Like it didn't really break through all that extra bit of noise. So this time around, he's trying something different. And you know what? To his credit, and I use air quotes on that, he's making more headlines in this election this time, and he's breaking through as a character with more name recognition. Is also it's his second time getting into the final two, which again is important for his name recognition because there is also a reminder there will be a moment because of Laporta's age even, there will be a time beyond Laporta for the club, and who knows what presidential candidates will be around then. But for Font is hoping that it is him. And what I'll say about politics, again, 101, is that, of course, 9 of them, and Laporta is the most magnanimous, we'll say, I wouldn't even say charismatic, but he certainly is a politician. He's an attorney first. He's a public speaker, yes, but he is a politician, and he has been so good at not saying or not saying what the plan is, but saying, trust me on this. Like you look at the levers, you look at the risks that Laporta has taken. He's taken risks and they've paid off, or in some cases they've paid off. And the ones that haven't, he's done such a great job, and his team has done such a great job of spinning that in a different direction. Like if the Femini, because the Femini also, their wage cap was lower in this past season, if the Femini do fail to win things this season or did fall off, right, that is where the criticism would come. But as long as the men's first team and the Femini, as long as they continue to win, as long as La Masia players come up, it is going to be a positive mandate for whichever president, including Laporta, is in charge. Again, this is just like politics 101. And I think, again, from my perspective, it's like, even with the Messi stuff, like, again, I have affiliations with Major League Soccer, and I can tell you that Messi's story post PSG has 85% to do with that Apple deal and Messi and Inter Miami and that thing than it does about what's happening in Barcelona. Barcelona, for so much of it, like it is almost like, again, Messi is still being used as some lightning rod name because that gets people's attention, right? If you tell a story about Messi, people are like, wait, you said Messi? Barcelona? Returning? Not returning? Right? Like people have emotions. People have feelings about that, as opposed to just saying, well, Messi was definitely incentivized with the World Cup in 2026 to sign with MLS because of the Apple deal and because of the, right, like money that is in this amorphous place with boring, again, we even talk about the wage bill and the wage cap and boring words like amortization and all this stuff. Like that's actually like the financial part of this is actually where like the club's health lies, but it's so boring and nobody wants to hear about it. And like, you know what I mean? So it's like, to me, I guess my devil's advocate is like, I hear your feelings towards it, Omar. I hear your passion, and it's interesting to me that I don't know what's made me so cold. Maybe it's the decades of
No,
supporting.
it's okay. It's all right, man.
Yeah, it's just like I don't, not say that I can't get up to it, but it's just like, yeah, it's a lot of, it's nothing but frustration from me. To your point about listening to that debate, because it's just like nothing is going to be said. And it's, if you had the expectation that these candidates a week out are going to say something, then you're going to be supported. Because again, that is like, Barcelona is so interesting, and it's a beautiful thing that the club is owned by its members, and that you have presidential elections, and there's not just some billionaire owner coming in and making choices and gutting your club from the inside out. That the nuances around Barcelona, yes, the decisions are made by the president, but as I said, like Catalan, like whether it's lawyers, businessmen, like rich like Catalan millionaires are the North Star for Barcelona, and because that is who their president is going to be, and that's the through line. But you're right, like the differences in personality and nuance, and the people that they surround themselves with are really important too. Because again, the only thing that really sticks out to me about the objectors of Laporta is who he surrounded himself with. I mean, he has had family members, right? Like there are things you can hit Laporta with, and it's been interesting to me that Font hasn't really keyed in on any of those things. Instead, to your point, it's been this amorphous, like he's not done a good job. But again, like that is a losing message, because Laporta, they won the domestic treble last season. They have one of the most exciting players in the world. Like, whether Font wants to admit it or not, Lamine Yamal, not Xavi, not Messi, Lamine Yamal is probably going to win Laporta the election. That's it. Like, and he would have won whatever incumbent president. Like Lamine Yamal would have won and Pedri, they would have won any incumbent president the election, regardless of anything else that was going on.
100%. 100%. But listen, we will see how this whole thing ends. Honestly, obviously, I just want to see, the best for the club. And I feel like Laporta, he's building something, and I just want to see where it ends. And like I mentioned, I feel like the second term will probably be his last term. And sure, Victor Font will probably be back again, trying to run again. Maybe this time against Gerard Piqué, potentially. Who knows, right? We don't really know yet. We don't really know yet. Yeah. It definitely could happen. I feel like it's one of those things which is kind of inevitable, because Gerard Piqué is really ingrained with the club, so you kind of feel like it wouldn't surprise you if he did run for president, maybe in the next term, potentially, right?
Yeah, but, I mean, I would give it a little bit. I think he's really enjoying his other business.
Yeah,
like, I think he is really enjoying the persona that he's created, and I don't think he's going to want to lose the opportunities that he's kind of working with now. And he has time. I would say like wait like another 15, 20 years on Piqué. But Omar, I could be wrong. You might be right.
Yeah, 100%. Well, you know what, right? Let's actually conclude with the final thing we're going to talk about. Let's actually go back to the game, right? On the pitch again. Big game tomorrow, right? Newcastle United, Champions League round of 16 at St. James's Park. Obviously, we started our Champions League at St. James's, and we did the job, right? We won 2-1 in our last game there. But, we kind of got the luck of the draw again, because last season we were given a very, very good side of the draw, right? We looked like we were the favorites on our side of the draw, right? And we were so close to reaching the final. Obviously, we came up short. But I feel like this year, I feel like we've actually had a much better luck of the draw, I'll be honest, right? Because on paper, apart from really Arsenal on paper, I feel like we really have a good route to reach the final again, right? This time around. And obviously, it starts with this Newcastle game. Now, Newcastle have not been good domestically in their league, right? We've seen them in the Premier League, in the FA Cup. They've not been playing the great football at Eddie House, and a lot of pressure on the Newcastle fans. Trust me, I'm sure Dan, you've probably spoken to like the Newcastle podcast, like they probably have a similar opinion. I know a lot of Newcastle fans have spoken to have the same opinion with Eddie Howe, right? They're not really confident, but in Europe, they've been pretty good. They've been pretty impressive, right? They were in the round of 32 or round of 60, whatever the playoff round is called. But they won their games against Karabakh, home and away. They drew their last game in the league phase against PSG, right? They've beaten teams like Benfica, Athletic Club. Right? They have had a very impressive campaign in Champions League. And for Barca, it's interesting. For me, I feel like the Champions League is where we haven't really seen our best performances. We've won games, but performance-wise, I feel like there's still more room for improvement. Right. And I feel like in the round of 16, I feel like this is where we need to start to see some improvements if we're really serious about trying to win the Champions League. Hafet, let me actually start with you on this one, right? What do you think about this game against Newcastle? How crucial is this away game at St. James's?
Obviously it's huge. I would say that having second leg at home is a very, very, very nice. It's really good that we've already been there. We've already won there as well. The atmosphere was as hostile then because it was the first game of the Champions League against Barcelona as it will be tomorrow night. Getting that feel good factor, getting that victory, which Juan Garcia hinted at in the pre-match press conference just a few hours ago. I just think overall, just, get out of there unscathed. If you can get a draw, if you get a win, even if you lose by 1, it's fine. At the end of the day, you'll get the job done at the Camp Nou regardless. It'd be nice that we don't have to get the job at the Camp Nou done. Just go into that game calm and cool. I will say this. Our 2 league games in between the 2 fixtures are Sevilla and Rayo Vallecano, which we've not beaten this season. We lost to Sevilla, the Ramos Sanchez piece 1. We drew with Rayo 1-1. They're both at home. So you do expect Barcelona to have not comfortability, but a little bit of ease. I think Madrid have Mallorca and Atletico Madrid, so you maybe expect them to drop points, and they have Man City in between as well. So this game could maybe set the standard and set the track going for a comfortable week and a half ahead of the March international break. If you go to this game, you win by a goal or 2, knowing that a draw in the second leg, you'll be through into the next round. I think with Barcelona this season, it's not all about glamour. We saw that last season when we beat Dortmund 4-0, you beat Benfica 3-1 and stuff like that. It's now about progression. It's now about showing professionalism that you can get over the line in tight draws. Newcastle as well have big games. They have a Chelsea-Stamford Bridge trip on the weekend, which is going to be big for them because they're pushing for European spots in the Premier League, although Chelsea play PSG as well. So they got their own problems to work with as well. I think Barcelona, they can easily win this tie in this game. Go out there, get a 2-3 goal victory, especially silence the stadium quite early. I will say the St. James's Park is very, very hostile, huge atmosphere, one of the biggest atmospheres in the Premier League by far, but they can be quiet down with a few early goals. We've seen this in the past when they lost to Everton for 3-2. The stadium got quiet even with against City in the FA Cup this past weekend. So I think this game is definitely doable at Barcelona. The players and the manager have been talking all season about the Champions League. Again, you mentioned, Omar, that we got the very, very, very easy draw again. So it's in their hands. I think they'll get the job over in this round for sure. Let's hope for a comfortable and most importantly, a decent margin win in this game.
100%. Dan, thoughts on the game tomorrow against Newcastle?
Well, I actually think that Newcastle in September was one of Barcelona's better played games. And in the form that Lamine Yamal is in, the only thing to note is that Lamine Yamal is scoring and assisting. And right now the forwards of Barcelona otherwise are a bit out of form. So that's a little bit of a concern. But I think for the way that Barcelona have found their form, and yes, there was 4-0 against Atleti, but it was interesting to note how well the Barcelona did kind of match up with Newcastle, but also vice versa. So I think this match, tomorrow's matchup, I would say is probably going to be a bit of a hard watch. Like Newcastle and Atleti do play a very similar, not necessarily numerically, tactically, but they play a similar pressing style, a similar level of intensity, and it's not that surprising that Eddie Howe, in between his time with Bournemouth and Newcastle, went and visited Atleti training and talked to Diego Simeone, and they've shared some ideas. I think that's a very similar style that we're going to see, and we've seen that Barcelona, have the quality there, and yet this tie could come down to like how well does Lewis Hall or Tino Villamenta, how well does the left back do against Lamine Yamal? How much help are they going to need against Lamine Yamal? And with Barcelona, without their 2 fullbacks, how's Cancelo going to do against the combination of Alanga or Harvey Barnes and the movement of Anthony Gordon? Will it be Lewandowski or Ferran Torres? As we mentioned, like there are some decisions around the edges, but I like the 11 that Barcelona has to put forward. And I'll tell you, my predictions were 1-0 tomorrow at St. James Park and then 2-1 at the Camp Nou, just because I think Barcelona are just that little much better. But again, and this is me being very conservative.
I'm laughing because that's my exact prediction. I said 1-0.
I do understand where you're coming from, though, Dan, because I feel the same, very similar to you.
Yeah, and I think, again, tactically, without Bruno Gomes for Newcastle, they're missing that organization and that bite. And if I'm not mistaken, they have only won once in the league at St. James Park without him since he arrived in 2022. So that is a huge, huge task without Bruno Gomes. And the fact that Pedri is healthy. And De Jong actually had an excellent second half against Newcastle, that first one, breaking through those lines. But the fact that as long as his tummy is okay, with Marc Bernal only having to play 45 minutes against Athletic Club, as I said, and then Pedri only playing 45, I have a bit of confidence that on the road, the midfield of Barcelona will be superior. And as we know, as long as your midfield is tight through the middle and you can handle, it's really like the wing stuff, right? It's like, can Newcastle get in behind Cancelo? The answer is going to be yes, but will they score in those yeses? And then the other side for Eric Garcia, struggled about the first 15, 20 minutes with pace against Athletic Club, but then really settled down, I thought, into that game. And, if he can just be confident and understand back, okay, I'm confident again and right back. He's playing center back and defensive midfield so much. So, back to being right back and figuring that stuff out. I think, again, I do like Barcelona's chances, but as we say, I know it's a platitude, but it is not going to be easy. And I think our throat's going to be in our chest, but there's a bit more confidence that I've had in the past. But the last thing I'll say is that regardless of the draw on Barcelona's side of things, nothing is ever guaranteed. And again, the thing I would note is that even though that Barcelona's best player is 18 years old and their best center back is 19 and their goalkeeper's in his first year at the club, and that's kind of it. Pedri and Rafinha are who they are. But regardless of your best player being 18 and something of your most important, let's say, how about this? Another one of your most important midfielders at the moment is 18 and coming back from ACL. How about that? So regardless of the circumstances, making it feel like this Barcelona team is building into who they are, you never know. Like there is a chance that this might be the only Champions League for a million reasons that Hansi Flick and Lamine Yamal and Pau Gasol might win with Barcelona, right? There's like a million chances. You'd hope that it's not the case, but you never know when's your year and when isn't. When it looks like it could be your year, it won't be. And when it looks like it isn't going to be your year, then it might be. So my whole thing about the Champions League this year, for those Kool-Aids who are saying that Barcelona do not have it, the advice I always give is to actually watch other football, because everyone who tells me that La Liga is Barcelona's, they're flawed, they stink, they can't defend, whatever. Watch Real Madrid play something to be like. Watch Real Madrid matches. Real Madrid can still win the Champions League because of vibes, whatever. That's a thing. But I'm saying, you don't have to. But I'm just telling you, if you're getting down on Barcelona, just watch the other.
No, trust me. You're right.
Watch PSG. Watch, because everyone who says that Luis Enrique needs to replace Hansi Flick, watch PSG recently in the last 2 months. You know what I mean? That's what
they've not been good. They've not been good. You're right. They even lost last weekend in Monaco.
Yeah, the point is Barcelona is flawed, but every Champions League team right now is flawed. So Barcelona had as much of a chance as the great and my second favorite team right now, Bodo Glimt. Right? They are the favorites. Obviously, Bodo Glimt are obviously going to win the Champions League, but if not them, then it definitely could be Barcelona. I'm joking. I'm joking with everything that they do. We don't have time for me to talk about Bodo Glimt.
No, absolutely.
I'm sorry, we've run out of time for that, but I have a lot. I've said a lot about Bodo Glimt, but again, what they've done without, because they're not a team on the rise.
Incredible. I love clubs like this, man. Clubs that punch above their weight, especially in Europe. You love to see it because they don't have the finances, they don't have the players, but what they have is heart. Like the fact that they've been City, Atletico, and Inter Milan. Like, come on. Like, it's one thing beat one of those three teams, but like you actually beat three of like the top teams in Europe like that. Well, and to make it better,
where they are, Apoel in 2011, 2012 is the only
quarterfinals against Real Madrid. I remember that.
Of a club who because that's the argument too. The Monaco team with Kylian Mbappe, the Ajax team with De Jong and De Ligt, those teams got ripped apart then in the summertime because they had young, exciting, new future stars. Bodo Glimt do not. Like the most that they're going to sell a player for is probably like 20, 25 mil when other teams come calling. I would be surprised if they went for more than even 35. And so the fact that they're doing this they are the most fun sum of their parts team right now.
I'm not gonna lie. I would love to see the Fede League semifinals because it would actually be nice to actually play them. I don't know how maybe I'm gonna be a little bit nervous if they did make the semifinals. We're like,
but I don't want Barca to be the villain. I don't want Barca to be the villain.
Yeah, they might have beaten Arsenal.
If it gets to a final, I'll be the villain happily.
Okay, that's true.
But listen, guys, appreciate every single one of you guys who have been watching, guys. This has been a special episode of the Blaugrana Podcast. Appreciate you, Dan, for joining us today on this episode of the Blaugrana Podcast. Make sure you guys go subscribe to the Barca Podcast, guys. Link to his channel will be in the collab feature, so make sure you guys go subscribe to him. Obviously, he's doing a lot of content, and also make sure you guys go to the Big Up app, because if you guys do want to, he does do watch-alongs, guys, on the Big Up app, so make sure you guys go out and check him out on the Big Up app. And listen, man, appreciate every single one of you guys. Let us know everything that we talked about. This has been a long podcast today. I appreciate every single one of you guys who watched from the whole start to the end of the stream. And yeah, big up to every single one of you guys. Visca Barça, Visca Catalonia. and peace. Take care, you guys.